He said it for days after the funeral. I was standing in the hallway when I heard him say it to his wife. Now we can sell her stuff and downsize. She doesn't need all that anymore. He was talking about my things, my home, my life with Rick. He didn't know I was listening, but I was. And the next morning, I donated everything: Rick's tools, our furniture, even the fine china they were eyeing. Then I sent him one message. The only thing being downsized is your inheritance. He never saw it coming. And now, he has nothing. My name is Helen Marlowe. I'm 64 years old. And just 3 weeks ago, I buried my husband Rick. We were married for 41 years. He was the kind of man who remembered how I took my coffee, who never missed a birthday, who still opened the car door for me even when we were just running errands. We built our life in a little one-story house in North Carolina. Nothing fancy, just a cozy home filled with memories. A porch swing Rick hung himself, a garden we planted together every spring, and shelves full of books we both read over cups of tea. When he passed, everything felt quiet in the worst way. I still caught myself setting to plates at breakfast, still waited to hear his boots in the hallway, still talked to him out loud, forgetting for a moment that there would be no answer. People say grief comes in waves, but for me, it felt more like a fog. You move through it, slow and heavy, and nothing feels real. For days after the funeral, my son Nathan and his wife Candace came over. They brought dinner from a restaurant, handed me a stack of sympathy cards, and sat on my couch like they were waiting for something. At first, I was glad to see them. I thought maybe they just wanted to check on me, but something about their tone felt rushed, like they had somewhere better to be. Nathan looked around the living room, then said, "Mom, I know it's been a tough week, but we should start thinking about practical stuff. The house is too big now, don't you think?" I looked at him and didn't answer. That house wasn't just a place. Rick built parts of it with his own hands. He sanded those floors. He carved the mantel in the living room. Every corner held a memory. Candace chimed in with her usual polished smile. "It might feel good to simplify. You could get something modern, closer to town, fewer rooms. No need for all this space anymore." I nodded, but I didn't say anything. I just wanted them to go. That night, I couldn't sleep. I got up to make some tea. As I passed the hallway, I heard them talking in the living room. They didn't know I was nearby. I stood there, in the dark, holding my breath, and what I heard broke me. They weren't just worried about me. They were planning to go through my things, sell the house, sort the furniture, handle the estate. Nathan said it like he was talking about cleaning out a storage unit. No feeling, no care, just business. And in that moment, standing barefoot, in the hallway with the cold floor under my feet, I realized something. They weren't here for me. They were here for what they could take. I stood in that hallway for a long time, not moving, not breathing, just listening. I wasn't supposed to hear what they were saying, but I did. And once you hear something like that, you can't unhear it. Nathan's voice was calm, like he was talking about a business transaction. He wasn't angry or emotional. He was cold, practical. Like all of this, my grief, Rick's death, our home was just another task to handle. "We should go through her stuff soon," he said. "The furniture alone could bring in a decent amount. And the house? It's probably worth more now than ever. She doesn't need all this space." Candace nodded. "We can hire a cleaner, maybe a company that clears estates. That'll make things faster. The kitchen alone has, what, 4 sets of dishes." My hand tightened on the hallway wall. Those dishes weren't just plates. They were the ones Rick and I had collected over the years, ones we brought home from small shops during our anniversary trips. Some chipped, some mismatched, but all full of stories. Then Nathan said something that made my stomach turn. "She probably won't argue," he said. "She's lost. She'll follow whatever we suggest. Honestly, it might be better for her." He didn't mean better for me. He meant easier for them. Fewer emotions. Less mess. Quicker sale. I stood there in the dark, heart pounding, eyes burning. But not from sadness. From something else. Something sharper. That it wasn't just what he said. It was how quickly he had moved on. My husband, his father, wasn't even cold in the ground. And already my life was being packed into boxes. Like I was next. I went back to my room and sat on the edge of the bed. Rick's slippers were still beside the nightstand. His reading glasses were folded neatly on top of his favorite book. His scent still lingered in the room. How could someone who grew up in this house speak like that? Nathan had sat on Rick's shoulders as a boy. He had helped paint this room one summer when we were fixing it up. Rick had taught him how to ride a bike on that very street outside. Had it all meant nothing to him? The next morning, I didn't speak much. I made coffee, toasted some bread, and pretended to listen as Candace scrolled through real estate listings. On her phone, "This place is great," she said, turning her screen toward me. "1 bedroom, low maintenance, and it's only 15 minutes from the city." I nodded politely, then took my coffee out to the porch. I sat on the swing and looked out over the yard Rick had loved so much. The grass needed trimming. The rose bushes were still holding onto a few late blooms. He had planted those for me after our 30th anniversary. I thought about what would happen if I said nothing, if I just let them take control. I could picture the house being emptied, stripped of its meaning, sold to strangers. I could picture my husband's belongings ending up in the trash or sold online, handled by people who never knew his name. That wasn't going to happen. That night, after they left, I made a list. I wrote down every item in that house that had a story behind it. Rick's medals, his old records, the tools he kept in perfect order. I thought about the people who would value those things: veterans, single mothers, shelters, small churches, places where those items could become part of someone else's story. I went to the garage, turned on the light, and pulled out boxes. I started with the tools. I cleaned each one, wiped them down, labeled them, and set them aside. I made calls the next morning to a local community center and a nonprofit that helps veterans transition into new jobs. They were more than happy to take everything. Then I went through the kitchen. I packed the dishes they thought were useless. I added a note to each box where we got them, what they meant. I dropped them off at a women's shelter that afternoon. Each donation made me feel lighter. Not because I was letting go of Rick, but because I was putting his memory into the hands of people who would appreciate it. This wasn't about revenge. It was about respect. Asterisk, the last thing I did was print out one of the photos of Rick and Nathan fishing together. When Nathan was 12, I slipped it into an envelope with a handwritten note that said, "Some things in life are meant to be passed down. Others are meant to be passed on. You made your choice. So I made mine." The next day, I sent the message that would seal it all. "The only thing being downsized is your inheritance." Then I turned off my phone. I sat at the kitchen table, drank a cup of tea, and felt more in control than I had in weeks. By the time I sent that message to Nathan, "The only thing being downsized is your inheritance," I had already made up my mind. But what I hadn't expected was how calm I felt afterward. Not angry, not bitter, just steady. I had cried for days after Rick passed. I had felt hollow, directionless. But when I heard my son talking about selling our life like it was old furniture, something inside me came back to life. It wasn't anger that woke me up. It was clarity. I saw the truth of who he'd become, and I saw what I needed to do to protect the one thing Rick and I had built together, our legacy. That morning, after I sent the text, I called Mary, my neighbor and closest friend. She had known Rick since we were newlyweds, and I trusted her more than anyone. I told her what I had overheard. I told her what Nathan and Candace had been planning. She didn't try to calm me down or tell me to see it from their side. She just said, "Well then, it sounds like it's time for a reset." Mary came over with empty boxes and strong coffee. We started in the attic. I hadn't been up there in years, but everything was just as I remembered: photo albums, letters Rick and I wrote to each other during his deployment, the blanket my mother crocheted for our wedding, and baby clothes from when Nathan was still small enough to be held in one arm. We didn't cry. We sorted carefully, respectfully, with intention. Every item that mattered went into a box labeled keep. Everything else was divided: donate, give away, trash. But the most important pile, the one marked give where it matters. I didn't want Rick's tools collecting dust in a garage sale. I wanted them in the hands of someone who could use them. I called a local vocational training center that works with veterans and young men coming out of foster care. When I told the man on the phone what I had, he asked if I could drop them off that week. I can bring them tomorrow, I said. I packed Rick's power drill, his tool belt, his measuring tapes, even the little red pencil he used to keep behind his ear. I tucked a note inside the box: these built a life worth remembering. After that, I went through our books. Rick and I had been readers. Novels, history, old cookbooks, poetry. We had shelves of them, and I knew most wouldn't mean much to Nathan. He once told me we should go digital, so I boxed up everything and called the local library. They were thrilled. Then I walked into Rick's study. This was the room that hit me the hardest. His reading chair still had the cushion he liked to flip over when it got warm. The desk still had a drawer full of index cards where he'd jot down favorite quotes or ideas for retirement projects he never got to finish. I sat in his chair for a long time, just holding one of those cards. In his handwriting, it read, "Leave the world a little better than you found it." That's when I knew this wasn't just about getting rid of things. It was about honoring Rick in a way Nathan clearly wouldn't. I called a small local museum, the same one Rick used to volunteer at once a month, and asked if they would be interested in a few items from his military service. They said yes. Without hesitation, I packed up his medals, the framed photo from his squadron, his dog tags, and the folded flag from his service. I brought them in personally. When I handed them over, the curator looked at me and said, "This is a real gift. These aren't just artifacts. These are pieces of a real man's life." And that's exactly how I felt. I wasn't throwing things away. I was placing them where they would be seen, valued, remembered. That night, I sat at the kitchen table with a small stack of envelopes. One by one, I wrote notes to the people and places that received Rick's things. I told them about who he was: not just the soldier or the craftsman, but the man who made me laugh when the world was heavy, who always kissed me good morning, who never let a birthday go by without baking a cake himself. Then I sat down with my will. I removed Nathan as executor. I adjusted the terms of the trust Rick and I had set up. I made donations to the organizations that had taken in his belongings. I gave the rest to causes Rick cared about: education, veterans, and small-town libraries. I didn't need to punish Nathan. I just needed to remove him from the story. By the time I finished, the house was quiet again, but not heavy. It felt like I had cleared the fog that had settled after Rick died. I didn't just clean out the rooms. I cleared space for peace. And, for the first time since Rick passed, I slept through the night. It was a Saturday afternoon when Nathan showed up at my house, unannounced. He didn't text, didn't call, he just pulled into the driveway like he still owned a piece of my life. I saw his car from the window, a brand new SUV that he'd been bragging about a few weeks earlier. He stepped out wearing sunglasses and that same look he always had when he was trying to take charge of a situation. I didn't move to greet him. I sat on the porch swing, sipping iced tea, watching him walk up to the house like a man with a plan. Maybe he thought I'd be relieved to see him. Maybe he thought I'd pretend the message I sent was a moment of grief-fueled emotion. I think part of him believed I'd already started packing, waiting for his help to downsize. He had no idea what he was walking into. He opened the front door and called out, "Mom?" I didn't answer. I let the silence answer for me. He walked through the living room and stopped short. That's when he saw it, the empty space. No coffee table, no couch, no framed photos on the wall, just bare hardwood floors and a few folding chairs stacked in the corner. The home he expected to take apart piece by piece was already cleared out, stripped of everything he thought he could claim. "Where's all the furniture?" he asked, walking toward the kitchen. I stood up from the swing and stepped through the doorway. "Gone," he turned, confused. "Gone where?" "Donated. Given away. Some things were kept. Most were passed on to people who actually need them." He frowned. "You donated the furniture? Without talking to me first?" "I didn't think I needed your permission," I said, my voice steady. "But that was part of the estate. Part of Dad's assets." "No," I said firmly. "That was our life, our memories, our home. And you treated it like it was just inventory. So I made sure it didn't become that." Nathan stood there blinking, like he didn't quite understand what was happening. Then his voice hardened. "Do you know how much money you just gave away?" I nodded. "Every bit of it. And it felt right." He let out a bitter laugh. "Unbelievable. So what? You're just throwing everything away because you're mad." I stepped forward. "No, Nathan. I'm doing this because I finally saw you for who you are. You didn't come here to help me. You came to pick over the remains. You couldn't wait a week before you started making plans that didn't include me. Only what you could take from me." He looked like he wanted to argue, but I didn't give him the chance. I pointed to the hallway. "The study is empty. His tools are gone. His books, medals, everything. It's all been placed in hands that respect it. Nothing is sitting in a box waiting for you." He shook his head slowly. "You've really lost it." "No," I said. "I finally came to my senses." He was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "So that text, you really meant it." "I did. The inheritance you thought was guaranteed. It's gone. I've updated the will. I've left it to charities, shelters, libraries, and veterans programs. People who understand what it means to value something. People who know how to give without asking what they'll get back. You can't just cut me out like that." "I didn't cut you out," I replied. "You stepped out when you made it about money instead of memories. When you treated your father's death like a financial opportunity." Nathan stood there, his face tight. I could see the anger building behind his eyes. But there was something else to shock, maybe even shame. For once, he had nothing to say. "I hope someday," I said quietly, "you understand what you lost. And I don't mean the furniture or the inheritance. I mean the chance to be part of something real. Something built on love, not greed." He didn't stay long after that. He turned around, walked out the front door, and didn't look back. No goodbye, no apology, just silence. I watched him drive off, the SUV disappearing down the road like a chapter closing. The house was quiet again, but this time it felt peaceful, lighter, not because things were gone, but because the weight of pretending was gone too. That evening, I sat in Rick's old chair, the only one I kept, and lit a candle by the window. I opened his favorite book and read the page he had bookmarked before he passed. It said, "To live with purpose is the only wealth that lasts." I closed the book and smiled, because in that moment, I knew I had made the right choice. The days after Nathan left were quiet, but the silence didn't feel lonely anymore. It felt earned. It felt like space that Rick would have been proud of, open, honest, and free from the weight of unspoken resentment. I finished clearing out the rest of the house over the next week. I kept only what mattered. A few photos, Rick's dog tags, the rocking chair from our bedroom, the garden tools he'd used every spring. I didn't need much. What I needed couldn't be boxed or sold. Once the house was empty, I listed it myself. No real estate agent, no fancy staging, just a clean, simple home full of good energy and love. It sold quickly to a young couple expecting their first child. They told me they dreamed of a home where their kids could run in the yard and bake cookies in the kitchen. I smiled and told them, that's exactly what this house was made for. I moved into a small cottage not far from town, close to the lake where Rick and I used to take weekend drives. The place is small, just 2 bedrooms, a front porch, and a little garden, but it feels like mine, like something I chose for myself, not something I was shuffled into by someone else's plan. I started volunteering at the community library on Tuesdays and the Veterans Center on Thursdays, the same one that took Rick's tools. The men there remembered him. Some had met him during his time volunteering years back. One of them told me, "Your husband helped me get back on my feet. He taught me how to build furniture from scraps." That meant more than any inheritance ever could. One Saturday morning, while organizing books at the library, I found a small group of children gathered around a shelf of donated books. Some of them were ours, books Rick and I had read together, our names still written inside the covers. One little girl picked up a copy of To Kill a Mockingbird and held it like it was treasure. That's when it hit me. Rick's life didn't end with a headstone or a folded flag. His life continued in the hands of others, in tools that would build again, in books that would be read again, in a home that would be loved again. He would have liked that. As for Nathan, I haven't heard from him since that day. No calls, no texts, nothing. A part of me still aches when I think about how far apart we've grown. He's still my son. That won't change. But being someone's mother doesn't mean you let them walk over your heart. I raised him with love. I raised him to know better. But somewhere along the way, he started valuing money more than memories, convenience more than connection, and I can't carry the weight of that for him. Sometimes people show you who they really are when they think you're too broken to see clearly. And sometimes it takes loss to open your eyes. One afternoon, I sat on my new porch with Mary, sipping sweet tea like we used to when our kids were little. She asked me if I missed the old house. I thought about it for a moment and said, no, because the best parts of it are still with me. The memories don't live in the walls. They live in the stories I carry, the people I help, and the quiet peace I've found. Mary smiled. You didn't just downsize, Helen. You upgraded. We both laughed at that. The truth is, I didn't do what I did out of spite. I did it out of love for Rick, for myself, and for the life we built together. I wanted to protect what we created, even if it meant letting go of what others expected. Grief has a way of stripping everything down to what really matters. It shows you who people are, but more than that, it shows you who you are. And what I've learned is this: love isn't proven in wills or inheritance papers. It's proven in how we carry each other forward, how we honor each other when no one's watching. Rick's memory lives on not in things, but in actions, in the people helped by the tools he once used, in the children reading books we once loved, and in a woman who found strength in the quiet after the storm. The world didn't fall apart when I gave everything away. In fact, it came together, piece by piece. I lost my husband. I lost what I thought was family, but I found something stronger. I found my voice, and I found peace.